You know that feeling, you walk into a room and it suddenly gets quieter. Or someone says, oh, we were just talking about you, and the smile doesn't reach their eyes. That sting, that's the shadow of gossip. Let's be honest, it hurts. No matter how strong we are, hearing that someone has gossiped about us touches that deep, tender place inside where we wonder, am I enough? Am I safe? Do I belong? When people gossip behind your back, your first reaction might be to defend yourself, or worse, retaliate. The temptation to clap back, spill their secrets, or gather your own little army of whispers can be incredibly strong. It's human. It's primal. But let me be clear. Just because it's natural doesn't mean it's helpful. In moments like these, the most courageous thing you can do is pause. Take a breath, find your center, and ask yourself one vital question. Who do I want to be in this moment? This isn't about being passive, it's about being anchored. It's about choosing to respond, not react. Because when we react from a place of hurt, we often become the very thing we're trying to avoid. Gossip may feel like a shortcut to power, but real power comes from integrity. The kind that doesn't shift based on who's watching or what room you're in. Integrity is doing what's right over what's easy. It's telling the truth even when it's uncomfortable. It's staying kind even when you're angry. And it's refusing to trade your peace for petty drama. One of the hardest truths I've had to learn is this: not everyone gets a front row seat to your life. And some people, when they can't control or understand you, will try to reduce you, to make you smaller through gossip or assumption. Don't hand them the pen to write your story. You don't owe anyone an explanation for living in alignment with your values. Here's something that helps. Write a personal code. I know it sounds cheesy, but hear me out. What are the values that define who you are? Kindness, courage, loyalty, honesty. When the storm hits and your name is in someone else's mouth, return to those values like a compass. Because when you're clear on who you are, what they say can still hurt, but it can't hijack your soul. You can't control how others choose to behave, but you can control what you make it mean. You can decide that someone else's opinion of you is not your identity. You can decide that you will not betray yourself just to feel included in conversations that cost you your dignity. Staying grounded in your integrity means knowing that your reputation is not built on rumors. It's built on how you show up day after day, quietly, consistently, and without needing to prove anything to anyone. And let's be honest, integrity won't always make you popular, but it will make you powerful in the way that actually matters. The kind of power that doesn't shout, doesn't need applause, and doesn't chase validation. It just is steady, rooted, and deeply unshakable. So when gossip comes knocking, don't answer it with more gossip. Answer it with grace, with clarity, with a kind of character that speaks volumes, even when you say nothing at all. That's the kind of presence that leaves an impression. That's what it means to stay grounded in your integrity. You feel the heat rise in your chest, your stomach tightens, you start replaying conversations in your head, analyzing every glance, every silence, every text left on read. Suddenly, you're scripting comebacks and plotting a confrontation in your mind. That's not weakness, that's survival instinct. Your brain is trying to protect you from rejection, betrayal, and shame. But here's the hard truth. Reacting from that place rarely makes anything better. It might feel good in the moment to fire back, call them out, or vent to someone else, but it doesn't actually get you closer to understanding what's really going on. So what if, instead of gearing up for battle, you got curious? What if you paused long enough to ask, what might be happening beneath this behavior? What pain, fear, or insecurity might be driving this? Is this about me, or is this about something they haven't learned to say out loud? This doesn't mean excusing bad behavior or pretending gossip doesn't hurt. It means choosing to understand before you judge. It's the difference between saying, "How dare you?" and saying, "Help me understand what's going on." Curiosity creates space for conversation. Combativeness builds walls. And I get it, this is not easy, especially for someone who's been hurt or betrayed before. Choosing curiosity takes enormous emotional maturity. It asks you to sit in discomfort, to resist the urge to assume the worst, and to approach someone with an open mind, even when your heart feels bruised. If the relationship matters to you, and if you feel emotionally safe enough, consider going directly to the source. You might say, "Hey, I heard something that really surprised me, and I wanted to check in with you about it directly. Can we talk?" 9 times out of 10, people aren't expecting that. They're expecting defensiveness, drama, or avoidance. But when you show up with curiosity instead of accusation, it often disarms the situation. You move from adversaries to two humans in a hard moment, trying to get it right instead of be right. Curiosity also helps you sort truth from noise. Sometimes people gossip because they're hurting. Sometimes it's a misunderstanding. And yes, sometimes it's projection, insecurity, or jealousy. But you'll never know which it is unless you ask, listen, and pay attention to patterns, not just words. Let's also be clear, curiosity is not weakness. It's not letting someone walk all over you or ignoring red flags. It's strength with softness, boundaries with grace. It's saying, I care enough about myself, and maybe even you, to look beneath the surface. And if after all that the person continues to be dishonest or unkind, that's your answer. But now you can walk away with clarity instead of confusion. You can walk away knowing you tried to lead with integrity and courage. That's the real win here, because gossip thrives on assumptions. Curiosity invites truth. So the next time your name ends up in a conversation you weren't invited to, take a breath, quiet the noise, and remember this. You don't have to light a fire to prove you've been burned. You can simply ask the right questions and let the answers tell you everything you need to know. Let's be real, when you feel betrayed, it's so easy to go for the jugular, to call the person out publicly, to shame them with a sarcastic comment, a passive-aggressive post, or a dramatic confrontation. And let's not sugarcoat it, there's a hit of power in that, a hit of control. For a moment, you don't feel small anymore. You feel like the one flipping the script. But shame isn't a tool for healing, it's a weapon. And when we use it, especially to punish someone for gossiping, we don't rise above the behavior, we mirror it. What takes real courage is calling out the behavior without turning the person into a villain. That means we name what's happening clearly, directly, and respectfully. We separate who they are from what they did. We say, this crossed a line, not you're a terrible person. Why? Because people can hear truth when it isn't wrapped in shame. They can grow from being challenged, but not from being humiliated. Let me give you an example. Imagine someone has been gossiping about you at work, spreading a half-truth or private detail you shared in confidence. Instead of blasting them in a meeting or posting something vague and spicy online, you might say, "Hey, I want to talk to you about something that's been bothering me. I heard that my name came up in a conversation, and some of the things that were shared felt personal and not entirely accurate. I don't want to make assumptions, but I also don't want to ignore it. Can we clear the air?" That's what it looks like to name it without shame. You're not pretending it didn't happen. You're not letting it slide. You're being direct but respectful. You're creating an opportunity for accountability, not defensiveness. And here's another truth. People rarely change when they're shamed, but they often reflect when they're called and with honesty and courage. Does this mean they'll always apologize? No. Does it mean they'll always own it? No, but you will have stayed on your side of the street. You will have honored your values. And sometimes that's the most powerful outcome there is. Now let's address something important. What if you're the one who gossiped? Yep, we've all been there. Maybe it wasn't malicious. Maybe it came from stress, envy, or insecurity. Maybe you didn't mean for it to get back to them, but it did. Claim it anyway. Own it fully, not halfway, not with excuses. I said something I shouldn't have. I was wrong. You didn't deserve that, and I'm sorry. That level of accountability, that's what builds trust. That's what allows relationships to heal. Because here's the thing. When we call out gossip, we're not just protecting our peace, we're raising the emotional standard for everyone around us. We're saying, I believe we can do better than this. I believe our relationships deserve honesty over hearsay, courage over comfort. So the next time gossip finds its way into your awareness, ask yourself, can I be honest without being hurtful? Can I hold someone accountable without tearing them down? Can I speak truth in a way that invites growth, not shame? But the answer is yes. Say it out loud with grace and firmness. Because gossip lives in silence and shadows. But truth needs voice. And when we choose to name what's happening without turning it into a spectacle, we turn a toxic moment into a teaching one. That's the kind of leadership the world needs more of. When gossip is happening, especially when it's directed at you, it can feel like you've lost control of your own narrative. It's disorienting, unfair, and exhausting. The natural instinct is to defend, explain, or even isolate yourself just to avoid the noise. But there's a better way, and it starts with this truth. You don't have to attend every conversation you're invited into, especially when the invitation is silent, shady, and spoken in whispers. That's where boundaries come in. Boundaries are not ultimatums. They're not walls to punish or isolate. They are statements of clarity and care for yourself and for your relationships. A boundary is simply you saying, this is what's okay for me, this is what's not. And when gossip enters your space, whether someone's talking about you, trying to pull you into talking about someone else, or crossing a line with your trust, you are allowed to name what you're not okay with. Here's the thing. Most people aren't trying to be malicious. They're often caught up in habit, insecurity, or groupthink. Sometimes they don't even realize what they're doing until someone lovingly but firmly calls it out. You could say, I want to be part of conversations that are honest and kind. Talking about someone who's not here doesn't sit right with me. Or more directly, I'd rather not be part of gossip. It drains me and it doesn't feel respectful. That one sentence, it changes the entire tone of the room. And let's not forget this. You also get to set boundaries with people who gossip about you. If someone repeatedly breaks your trust, spreads rumors, or undermines you behind your back, you don't owe them continued access to your time, energy, or vulnerability. You can say, I've heard a few things that make me feel uncomfortable. I'm not here to accuse or argue, but I want to be clear. If my name is going to be part of the conversation, I expect honesty and respect. If that's not possible, I'll be stepping back from this relationship. That's not drama, that's clarity, that's self-respect. Now here's where it gets even harder. When the gossip comes from someone close, family, a longtime friend, a colleague you trusted, setting boundaries can feel like a betrayal. You'll be tempted to tolerate it because of history, or because it's just how they are, or because you don't want to rock the boat. But let me ask you this, what's the cost of not setting the boundary? What does it do to your self-worth when you continuously allow someone to treat you like you don't matter? What message are you sending to yourself? Boundaries aren't just about protecting you from others. They're about protecting your relationship with yourself. When you hold the line, even when it's uncomfortable, you send a loud and clear message to the world. I am worthy of honesty. I am worthy of kindness. I am worthy of peace. Not everyone will like your boundaries. Some people will resist them. Some will push back. That's okay. Boundaries are filters, not fences. They help reveal who is capable of walking beside you in a healthy way and who is only comfortable when you are bending over backwards to accommodate dysfunction. Here's something to remember. The people who love you will adjust. The people who benefit from your lack of boundaries will resist. And when the resistance comes, don't let guilt guide you. Let clarity ground you. So if someone has been gossiping behind your back and it's affecting your mental peace, your energy, your environment, you don't have to explain yourself endlessly. You don't have to go to war. You can simply say, this is where I draw the line. I'm not available for this kind of energy in my life. And then follow through calmly, quietly, consistently. Because boundaries don't need to be loud to be powerful. They just need to be clear. And the clearer you are, the stronger your peace becomes. Did I do something to deserve this? Am I the problem? What are they saying? And is any of it true? That inner dialogue can be brutal, especially if you're someone who values connection, who wants to be liked, or who takes pride in your integrity. And let's face it, most of us do. But here's where you have to pause, breathe, and do something incredibly powerful. Sort through what's actually yours to own and what's not. Because here's the truth. Just because someone is talking about you doesn't mean you've done something wrong. Sometimes people gossip because they're uncomfortable with direct communication. Sometimes they're projecting their own insecurities. And sometimes they're simply repeating something they never should have heard or shared in the first place. But other times, yes, the gossip may be rooted in something you said or didn't say, something you did, or a moment when you weren't your best self. And that's where courage comes in. Not the kind of courage that stands up to someone else, but the kind that sits quietly and says, let me take an honest look at my side of the street. Did I speak out of turn? Did I break your confidence? Did I avoid a difficult conversation and it leaked out sideways? Did I unintentionally hurt someone who felt safer venting than confronting? This isn't about shame, it's about responsibility. There is a massive difference between guilt and growth. Guilt says, I'm bad. Growth says, I made a mistake and I can learn from it. Knowing what's yours to own means being honest with yourself, not harsh, not defensive, not dismissive. It's the maturity to say, yes, I said that. I was frustrated in venting. I could have handled it differently. I see how my behavior may have been misunderstood. Let me clarify. I wasn't aware how my actions landed. Thank you for letting me know. This kind of ownership is rare, and that's what makes it powerful. On the flip side, you also need to know what's not yours. It is not your job to control how others perceive you, especially when they're making assumptions without context or conversation. It is not your job to carry someone else's discomfort, envy, or unresolved issues. You are not responsible for someone twisting your story because they're uncomfortable with your growth. You are not responsible for being perfect, palatable, or endlessly available to everyone. But yours, your words, your tone, your intentions, your energy, your patterns. What's not yours? Their projections, their unresolved pain, their need to be the center of the story, even if it means putting you down to feel taller. When you get clear on this, something incredible happens. You stop chasing closure where it isn't available. You stop over-explaining to people who aren't interested in understanding. You stop shrinking yourself to fit into spaces you've outgrown. Instead, you take accountability where it's needed, and then you let go. You grow from what's true. You release what's noise, and you move forward with a kind of quiet confidence that says, I'm not perfect, but I am learning. I am grounded, and I am not defined by someone else's version of me. And let me be clear, this work, it's not always pretty. It doesn't come with applause. You won't always get the redemption arc or the chance to clear your name. Sometimes all you get is your own peace, and that has to be enough. But over time, when you consistently show up with self-honesty, clarity, and humility, the people who matter will see you, and the people who don't, you'll learn to stop seeking your reflection in their distorted mirror. So yes, check your side of the street. Own your part, even if it's 2%. But then, lovingly, put down what was never yours to carry. That's what real maturity looks like. That's what integrity looks like. And that's how you build a self you can trust, no matter what anyone else is saying behind your back. Your story is sacred. Your struggles, your dreams, your doubts, your private truths, all of that is sacred ground. And not everyone knows how to walk on sacred ground without trampling it. When someone gossips about you, especially after you've been open, trusting, or generous, it can feel like a violation. Like you gave someone the keys to your inner world and they use them to open a door for everyone else to peek in. It's a painful lesson, but it's also a clarifying one. Because after betrayal comes the invitation to choose better, to choose wiser, to choose people who don't just want to sit with you at the table when you're winning, but who will hold space for you when you're doubting, struggling, or simply becoming. And that's what it means to keep your circle sacred. It's not about cutting everyone off. It's not about creating an echo chamber of people who always agree with you. It's about discernment. It's about asking, who can I be fully myself with? Who keeps my name safe in rooms I'm not in? Who doesn't need me to shrink to make them comfortable? Who holds me accountable with compassion, not cruelty? Sacred circles are built, not found. They don't appear overnight. They are cultivated through shared experience, mutual respect, and time. And most importantly, they are earned. Let's be clear, trust is not a gift. It's a layered living agreement. When you entrust someone with your story, your fears, your wounds, you are offering them a piece of your humanity. And if they take that and turn it into casual conversation or gossip fodder, they are showing you they haven't earned the right to hold that space. That's not about being dramatic. That's about being protective of your energy, of your peace, of your healing. Keeping your circle sacred also means you stop trying to prove your worth to people who only see you through the lens of their own insecurity. You don't need to defend your character in rooms that were never meant for your belonging. If someone is determined to misunderstand you, to tear you down, to twist your story, they're telling you more about themselves than they are about you. And your job isn't to fix their perspective. Your job is to walk with people who see you clearly and love you anyway. It also means we check in with ourselves and ask, am I a sacred space for others? Do I hold confidences with care? Do I speak up when someone's name is being dragged unfairly? Do I choose honesty over popularity? Because being part of someone else's sacred circle is a responsibility, not a right. And here's something else. Sometimes the most sacred part of your circle is solitude. Sometimes the season calls for fewer voices and more inner quiet. Sometimes your own company is the only space that truly gets you. And in that quiet, you heal. You rebuild. You remember who you are outside of other people's projections. That's not loneliness. That's reverence. So if you've been burned by betrayal or gossip, don't let it harden you. Let it hone you. Let it refine your standards. Let it teach you that being selective with your trust isn't cold, it's wise. You don't need 100 people in your circle. You need 5, maybe even 3, who you can trust with your silence, your mess, your truth. People who don't weaponize your vulnerability. People who defend you when you're not around. People who love you enough to tell you the hard truth and stay close anyway. That's sacred. And when you protect your circle, when you guard it with intentionality, honesty, and love, you stop wasting energy trying to manage gossip, and you start living from a place of peace. Not everyone should have a seat at your table, but the ones who do, they will nourish you. And you'll know them not just by how they treat you, but by how they speak when you're not there to hear it. You've now heard 6 ways to respond, not with bitterness, but with boundaries, not with retaliation, but with resilience. You stay grounded in your integrity because who you are is more important than what they say. You get curious, not combative, because seeking truth takes more strength than seeking revenge. You name it without shaming because courage means speaking up and holding dignity. You set clear boundaries because peace is something you protect, not something you passively hope for. You know what's yours to own because growth begins where blame ends. And you keep your circle sacred because trust is not something you give lightly, it's something you protect fiercely. Will doing these things make the gossip stop? Maybe, maybe not. But what it will do is help you rise above it, not in arrogance, but in alignment. It will help you sleep at night knowing you didn't lower yourself to meet a moment you were meant to lead. Because this is leadership. This is emotional adulthood. This is what it looks like to choose connection over chaos, integrity over impulse, and clarity over drama. So the next time you hear your name in a conversation you weren't invited to, don't panic, don't spiral, don't self-abandon. Pause, breathe, remember who you are. You're not here to manage every narrative. You're here to live your truth and let the rest fall where it may. And if nothing else, let gossip be a filter, not a reflection. A filter that shows you who's safe. A filter that shows you who's scared. A filter that ultimately reveals where your energy belongs and where it absolutely does not. Protect your peace, guard your truth, lead with love, and remember the loudest voices aren't always the wisest ones. Keep showing up, not to prove them wrong, but to keep becoming more of who you really are. That's how you rise.